Hello, everyone. Welcome back to the main stage. If you've been with us throughout the last 5 hours, I hope you've had a wonderful time viewing our panels and interacting in our youth-led sessions and capacity building workshops, which just finished about a few minutes ago. I am deeply thrilled and honored to be on the stage right now because that means I get to introduce you to an inspiring young person who I have had the pleasure of crossing paths with recently. Our keynote speaker for the Charter for Compassion Global Youth Conference is a global changemaker named Ziyaan Virji, and I am deeply honored to have the privilege of introducing him to you today. Ziyaan is a 22-year-old award-winning keynote speaker and founder of Leaders of Today. He started his own organization when he was just 15 years old and has worked with a range of organizations in the climate, health, and education space. He has shared his stories on some of the most powerful stages across the world, including TEDx, Global Education and Skills Forum, the World Education Summit, the United Nations, USC, UBC, McGill, and many others. Ziyaan has delivered over 200 performances in 7 countries around the world. Ziyaan has also very well deservedly, might I add, won some of the most prestigious accolades, including the Princess Diana Award, Global Teen Leader, and he was also the winner of the Dragons Den for Change and Future 25 Under 25. In this inspiring keynote, we have the honor of hearing Ziyaan, who will share his personal journey of impact over the past 7 years, where he has led initiatives that have reached over 500,000 people through his platform. I'm going to repeat that again, over 500,000 people through his platform named Leaders of Today. Drawing from his experiences in this keynote address, Ziyaan will provide tangible strategies for creating meaningful change, from mobilizing communities to building sustainable social ventures. He will highlight the critical role compassion has played throughout his journey, showing how empathy and kindness can drive both personal growth and global transformation, and also empower young leaders to harness their passion and use compassion as a tool for lasting impact. I cannot say it enough times. We at the Charter for Compassion are deeply honored for Ziyaan to take time to grace us with his presence, and more importantly, to give us and all of you watching today a chance to learn from his beautiful journey, one that is filled with so much courage and so much inspiration. And with that, I am going to bring Ziyaan onto the stage, and please feel free to keep interacting in the comment section of the chat. Ziyaan has said that he will be reading your comments in the chat.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Anim. I know you say you're super excited to have me, and I think an additional reason to that is it's 10:30 p.m. for you in India. Just like most of you that are joining from around the world, I know it's super late, so I really appreciate you taking out the time, and I'm hoping that I can leave today's session sharing stories, learning from you folks, and really talking about what compassion really means. So thank you. Yeah, thank you so much, Anim. I really appreciate it.
Thank you, Ziyaan.
Awesome. So I guess to start us off today, I see we have some friends in the chat who's saying thank you so much for tuning in. Lynn, Dr. Mansoor, thank you all for being part of this session. Super excited to be here. For me, when I was preparing for today's session, I just like some of you went to the website of Charter for Compassion, and I was reading a little bit about the history of how the charter was formed, and I was honestly very honored to see that we had the likes of Dalai Lama, Muhammad Ali, Richard Branson, some of the greatest people of all time, the goats of all time, really, sign on to this charter and see how global this movement has been over the years. 2 million people being part of this and signing on to the charter. And when I saw this, I'm like, what does compassion really mean? Um, it's a word that we often used. We often talk a lot about, but what does compassion really mean? And I did my research, and I would actually love for all of you to put in the chat what, in your words, what compassion means. But I did some research, and when I looked at the root cause of the word of compassion, right? Um, One of my mentors, every time there's a new idea or concept, he really likes to go and explore the root word of this. And so for me, I did the same thing, and I looked at the root word of compassion as a word, and compassion actually comes from the Latin roots, and it's actually broken into two different words. The first word is calm, and the second word is patchy. Now, it has this Latin word, it has a lot of history. And I looked at, okay, let us look at what these two words and the Latin context where this word actually came from actually means. And so the first part of it, calm, what it means is, uh, you can define it as with or together, and it indicates a sense of shared experience or connection. And so calm, which is the first part of this word, is all about togetherness. It's all about having a shared experience or connection with someone. And I see Felipe in the chat is saying compassion to him is feeling the pain of others and taking action to eliminate that pain. I love that. And so similar to Felipe, right? There's an element of compassion that's all about others, and it's all about having a shared experience together. Now, the second half, passion, has a root word of pati, P-A-T-I, and this root word means to suffer or to endure. Now, when I think about compassion, I never think about, I think about, relating to people or uh, feeling how they feel and feeling a sense of empathy. But when you look at compassion as a word, it really means how do you suffer or endure with someone else or together with someone else? How do you have this shared experience of suffering and enduring? And so it just goes to show how powerful this word is. It's more than just empathizing with someone or, feeling what they're feeling. It's really to suffer with them and to endure with them. And it goes to show how important the charter is and all the themes that we've explored today. Um, and I wanted to start off and plant that seed for all of you to think about. Samson in the chat talks about how it's a meeting between two equals because we have to have a shared experience. I love that. Azine say that compassion to her means humane connection that foster communities. And so, yeah, really, compassion is all about community and bring people together. It occurs when people can recognize the struggles others go through and identify how they can utilize the resources available to them to ease those struggles. And so, Azine's meaning is super aligned with the root word is like, how do we suffer together? How do we endure that pain together? And it really just shows how powerful this word is. Today, I have a couple goals. I want to share stories that I have learned or I've read about over my time, and think about how compassion really, how can we actually apply compassion? And I want to share a couple steps for you to think about compassion not only as a big concept, but something very, very tangible and something that you can apply on a small or big level. And the first sort of story that I want to share, when I was actually looking at the history of the Charter of Compassion, there were a lot of religious leaders that were involved. There was this round table where different leaders from different religious institutions came together and talked about the contributions that people made to the charter, and talked about how is it that we can come together and really practice compassion. And when I looked at religion, a religion has so many different stories, so many different anecdotes. And one story, so I come from a Muslim background, but I love the Buddhist traditions and religion. And one story that stood out for me was from the Zen Buddhism tradition. There's a story in the tradition about how there used to be a man in a village, and this man used to walk a couple of kilometers every single day to collect water for his family. And as he would collect water, he would usually have two pots. He would have one pot, really large pot on one shoulder, and this pot would be a perfect pot where he would have a lot of water in it. And then the second pot was a little imperfect. There was actually, this pot actually had a large crack on it. But regardless of that, this man had two pots, and every single day he would walk 10 kilometers and he would go to the nearby water source and he would fill water into these two pots. This man would come back, after he fills the water in these pots, and every single day as he walked back, he noticed that on his way back, one of the pots that was perfect would have all the water when he got back home. But the other pot that was a little imperfect and had a large crack on it, the water in that pot would only be half its level. But regardless of the situation, even though the man knew that, you know, um, this other pot had a crack, he didn't do anything about it. And he kept going every single day and continuing the same routine. A couple years passed, and a lot of people were wondering, why is this man not doing anything about this other pot? And a couple years passed by, and one day he gets back home, and the other pod actually talks to him. And the other pod is like, hey, I feel so terrible about myself that every single day you give me an opportunity to give you water, but I'm not able to fully give myself because I have this large crack and half my water is gone. And when the imperfect pod say that, the perfect pod was like felt so good about themselves. And the perfect pod was like, I'm perfect, I deliver, I've been doing this for years. And so the man told the imperfect pod and told him that what I want you to do is tomorrow when we go through the same journey, I want you to notice the path that we take. And so the imperfect pod was super confused because every time they notice it, they notice that half the water is going away in the path, and so they go on the same journey again, 10 kilometers, get to the water source. The man fills both the pots, and they start walking back. And what the imperfect pod notices is that every single day, half the water that is gone away from this pot has actually created this whole path of beautiful flowers that have been watered every single day. And the flowers are on this one side of the imperfect pot and not on the perfect side of the pot. Why do I share this story? The number one thing about compassion is that you can't really be compassionate to anyone else if you're not compassionate to yourself. You are not able to see the world. You're not able to see the beauties and see the different, be compassionate with anyone else, whether it's different communities. You're not able to suffer the pain of someone else unless you're compassionate to yourself. For all these years that the man was walking with this imperfect pot, the imperfect pot felt so terrible about themselves. They felt like they were, not contributing enough. They felt like they were not couldn't practice compassion because they were so focused on looking at what's not good with them. Um, but in reality, they were actually doing more than the perfect pot. They made this beautiful garden and beautiful flowers on this journey for all these years. And so when we're thinking about compassion, the number one step and number one thing that I want everyone on this call to think about is think about how you can be compassionate to yourself. We've all heard that analogy of, you can't fill someone else's cup if you haven't filled your own cup. And so the first step about compassion is I highly recommend some of you folks to think about is think about how you can be compassionate to yourself. And maybe even though you have all these imperfections, which we all have, by the way, when you're able to embrace that and you're able to fully love yourself and see yourself pass through that, that is when then you're in a position to look above and beyond yourself. And so that's number one rule for how to practice compassion: be compassionate to yourself. Going back to my journey, Anum shared an amazing introduction, and I was born and raised in East Africa. I know we have a couple people on this call that are from East Africa. I was born and raised in Tanzania, and in a background where on a day to day, on my way to school, on my way to home, on my way to the mosque, I would see all these different problems around me, whether it was poverty, whether it was hunger, whether it was climate, all these different issues I saw around me. But as a young person, at the time, I never fully understood what that meant or what I could do about that. And it was only until I was 15, after going through an experience where unfortunately I had lost um, a large period of my life. I lost 3 weeks where, unfortunately, as a result of dengue fever, I lost control of myself and I don't remember anything. I had this wake up call where um, and I always get super, emotional when I talk about it. But I had this experience where, because I lost 3 weeks of my life, I started realizing that I had a second chance and I wanted to do something that's bigger than myself. And I've shared this story before. So if you ever want to learn more about that experience, more than happy to share about it. But because I went through the experience, I had this moment where I'm like, I want to do something that's bigger than myself. I want to live a life that's more purposeful. I want to live a life that I can leave a legacy. And when I went through that experience, I had an opportunity to go back to school. And as part of my school curriculum, I was required to start up this personal project, and I could do anything of my choice. It was a 1 year long project, and it would contribute towards my grades. And it was basically a subject on its own. And because of this opportunity, I'm like, you know what? I just went through this experience. Now I have an opportunity to start my own project. How is it that I can, contribute to something that's bigger than myself? I didn't have any idea that I saw all these problems around me, but I was never really like passionate about something in specific. And I remember scrolling through my Facebook feed and watching this documentary on Al Jazeera's page that was about India's menstruation ban. Now, for me, as a 15-year-old boy growing up in East Africa in a Muslim household, that was the first time I learned about the fact that women and girls around the world are facing this issue and don't have access to menstrual products. And at the time, I was so surprised to hear this. And I had a conversation with my mom, and she told me that when she was younger, she didn't have proper access to menstrual products. She said she grew up in India in a single parent household, and they could not afford menstrual or period products for a long period of time. And she would use old rags and cloth and blankets every time she got a period each month. It was super unhygienic, super uncomfortable. She would leak a lot of times, and she shared a lot of stories with that. And I'm like, wow, I just watched this documentary. I just, um, hear this story about my mom. What is it that I can do about this? Maybe this is my opportunity to practice compassion. Now, as a man, I will never get a period, unfortunately. And I won't be able to fully understand what it means to have menstrual pain or not to have menstrual products, but I can still play my part. And so I'm like, step number one, let me go online and see different solutions that are available for this. I do my research. I looked at different solutions. There were menstrual products, there were disposable pads, there were reusable pads, there were tampons, there were menstrual cups. And I'm like, I really like the idea of reusable menstrual products. It sounds that it's eco friendly, and it sounds like a good solution that maybe I can, help and contribute towards. And so I reached out to every single organization that I found online. And as a 15-year-old, cold message all of them and try to understand more about this context and how big this problem is. And eventually, I came to terms that I'm gonna create my own reusable menstrual product that will last for 6 months. I worked with a local tailor. I looked at different online prototypes and I learned how to stitch. And I made this product that will last for 6 months. And I remember doing my presentation, I wore a black turtleneck and I stood in front of an audience and I called it the iPad. And you probably have seen this. Some of one of the greatest people of all time have also, created the iPad. And I thought that was funny. But anyways, I created this product and I found a community that had a need through an organization that introduced me to them. And the when I went into that community, there were 22 women and girls that needed access to this product, and I went and I distributed it to them. I took a bunch of pictures. I wrote a whole about this uh, topic. And I didn't get a full mark on it, so I did the IB and it was out of 7. I got a 6 out of 7. So regardless of that, I presented about it, and I thought I did my part. I saw a community, I found an issue, I practiced compassion by playing my part and trying to understand how deep this issue is. Took a bunch of pictures and felt really good about it. And I could have stopped at that point. But then when I went back to the community that I supported after a couple months, they were like, hey, there's a bit of an issue with your product. And I'm like, okay, tell me more. I thought I did an amazing job. I took pictures, like it felt really good. And they say, Ziyaan, you actually contributed more to the problem than solving it. And I'm like, what? I spent like 1 year trying to develop this product, test it out with my friends, got good feedback, iterated. Like, how can I contribute more to the problem than solving it? And what they told me was, because my product, one, they gave me a lot of feedback on the physical product and how it can be improved. But two, they told me that because my product only lasted for 6 months, what I did in reality was I created this dependency syndrome that after the 6 months, this community has to come back to me and ask me for more products. And I think there's a mistake that a lot of us make when trying to practice compassion. When trying to practice compassion, because there's so much information out there, because we all have our own biases and our own opinions, we sometimes make assumptions about the groups that we are practicing compassion with. And that can be anywhere from a friend to a community to a whole country. And that's the foundational issue of a lot of issues that we have in the world. We kind of assume that there's a specific issue. And what I learned through that experience is that in order for someone to practice compassion, after practicing compassion with themselves, the second step that is important to do is to listen. There's a famous TED talk that talks about how if you want to help someone, you have to shut up and listen. And it's similar to that same idea. If only before spending 1 year trying to solve this issue, I had taken the time to shut up and listen to the community that I was trying to help out, I would have saved so much time and I would have really focused on the root cause of the problem than trying to make myself feel good about what I really did. And so Autumn, mentions in the comment section the issue of trying to provide aid without addressing structural issues. Right there, that's exactly the issue. And I think that goes not only from an aid from a country's perspective at a larger scale, but even from when you're helping a friend, we just assume that they have a specific issue based on what they say. We never really spend time to get to know them, to understand them, to figure out what is the actual root cause of the problem versus the symptom of the problem. And so the number 2 step when trying to practice compassion is shutting up and listening. And so I did exactly that once I got that feedback. We spent so much time. I started my own team. I was like, you know what? I've learned so much from this experience. I started becoming passionate about it. And so we started a small team. We were 7 to 10 people at the time. We were all a bunch of 16, 17-year-olds. And we started going into all these different communities and just spending time with them, listening to them. And through some of that work, we ended up changing our approach now working with communities. Now, when we go in, we spend 2 to 3 weeks doing a needs assessment, building a relationship with them, getting to really know them and figuring out what the root cause of the problem is. Usually, based off of that, we have an educational workshop where we help um, we actually teach menstruators and non-menstruators about reproductive and sexual health, because usually it's not part of their school curriculum. And you see us spending time in front of a classroom sharing like the scientific bits, but also sitting in a round circle and sharing different stories of how to deal with different situations. Then we usually introduce our product. Now our product, before it used to last for 6 months. Now our product lasts 3 years. It's 100% biodegradable. It's cost effective. It comes as a package. It includes things like pairs of underwear, antiseptic soap, things that we never even thought about if we never listened to some of these communities. And and after introducing our product, we also tell them that this is not your only solution. There's a lot of different alternatives that you can use, but this is one that you can, you know, try out. And so we then, after that, have an evaluation session where we get feedback with the community and we celebrate with them what we've been able to accomplish. And in some communities, what we've actually done is, instead of just giving them these products, what we do is we go a step further to teach them how to make their own products. And what that really does is, it's that whole idea of don't give a man a fish, teach them how to fish. And so what we've seen is, if there's a community of 1,000 and we go in there and teach the skills to 10 people and we pass on that skill, those 10 then pass it on to 10 others, and those 10 pass on to 10 others. And eventually it has this exponential effect where the whole 1,000 community has access to the skill and hence the product. And in some communities, what we've done is we then take that skill and create entrepreneurial opportunities for them. And we try to address the root cause of the problem, which is being stuck in the poverty cycle in a lot of situations. And they use this entrepreneurial skills to take themselves out of this situation. And so, the reason why I shared that is, if I hadn't spent the time to listen to the communities that we worked with, if we didn't spend the time to build a relationship with them, we would have never got to the point where we co-created some of these solutions and been able to today having an impact on over 25,000 people in 10 countries. I've been so lucky to grow my organization over the last 7 years to a team of 150 young people in all these different countries around the world. And none of that would have happened if I didn't take that first, step. If I didn't take that first step of listening and practicing compassion by just listening. Shane in the chat says, when you shut your mouth, as you say here, you also breathe more efficiently through your nose, as well as listen better. Think better, feel better, focus better, connect better. Just shut your mouth. Great advice all around. Yeah, Shane, you couldn't have said it any better. I love that. And Autumn, yes, we have worked with Days for Girls. They're an amazing organization that we've had the chance to collaborate. They were actually one of the first organizations that, in my journey, when I was doing my research, I came across them. And so, as we went on with some of our work, we eventually in 2020 went through this period that I think a lot of us faced, but we went through the big P, the pandemic, and COVID hit us. And I remember right before COVID hit in March 2020, we were gaining a lot of momentum as an organization, and we had just received this massive grant of $12,500 from a local bank in Kenya, which is where I was based at the time. And as a young 17-year-old at the time, I'm like, wow, like we just finally got all this money to actually implement this project across the country. And I'm so happy that we're finally getting, the credit for some of the work that we're doing and getting the resources to back us up. And unfortunately, because of the pandemic, I had to travel back to Tanzania with uh, because of the lockdowns. And I remember being in a situation where I had all this money and finally got the resources to do the work, but because of lockdowns, we weren't able to do it. At the same time, we kept getting a lot of messages from so many community and seeing the news that this problem that we're working towards is only getting worse during COVID, because now people are at home and usually they get help in at school and get access to menstrual products in school, but now they're at home. They don't even have access to that. In Kenya at the time, there was this issue where a lot of young girls were actually trading sexual activity with local bike drivers so they could get money during the pandemic to get access to products. And so I'm like, what do I do now, right? We have this money, but we are in a lockdown. I'm not even in the country. How am I gonna be able to actually support these people? And that is where the power of compassion really came into life. What I ended up doing is I did all my research on all the different organizations across the country. At the time, we had only supported 500 girls to date, and we had this massive goal of reaching so many people now that we got this grant. And what I ended up doing is I reached out to every single organization. We worked with a team of women with disabilities that were actually making this products and earning a living out of it. And so I asked them to take their machines at home so that they will have their continuous source of income during the pandemic. And reached out to every single organization and mapped out the geographical locations. And what we said was, we'll make the products, we'll send it via a bus to your different communities. And if you folks can go door to door because you have access to your local region and distribute these products, that will help solve it. And what ended up happening is in 2020, we went from 500 girls that we supported to 8,500 girls. And none of that would have been possible if we didn't collaborate with others. And so I guess step three of compassion is really thinking about collaboration. Think about how is it that you can work with different organizations? How is it that you can work with different people to practice compassion? Because you can only scale and make a massive impact, um, whether it's in your community, whether it's in your country, whether it's on a global level, if you collaborate with others. And we can see through the Charter of Compassion how they've reached over 2 million people signed on to this because of the power of collaboration and the power of people coming together. So I wanted to share that story um, with you folks, because that's something that I feel like was a big transformation in my journey. Thinking about, instead of trying to do everything on your own, how can you collaborate, right? One of my friend usually says that the people at the bottom compete and the people at the top collaborate. And so really practicing this idea of collaboration when thinking about compassion. As I went on in my journey, eventually ended up moving to Canada for university. And I was, again, in 2021, I moved during the pandemic, and it was quite difficult for me to have that transition because I moved to this country and didn't know anyone, didn't have any family. And it was a pandemic, so it was so hard to meet people. And I unfortunately ended up going through an experience of burnout, and decided to take a step back from my work, um, and really evaluate. It took me a while to overcome that and recover from it. And eventually, I thought about, what is something that I want to work on or spend my time on. And I reflected on my younger self, and I thought about what are some of the challenges that I face as a young person when starting out. And one of the things was, having access to community, having access, being friends with like-minded people, having inspiration. There were a lot of gatekeepers in a lot of the work that I was doing, and so how do we break some of those gates? And I eventually ended up launching my own company, Leaders of Today, that does primarily that. We do a lot of we build community, and so we have a community of 50,000 young people on our newsletter. We have a podcast. We consult with different brands and organizations on how to do the same work, um, and went on the whole journey. But I don't want to talk a lot about that. I want to end with sharing this one last story that I experienced during my time in Canada. And so I remember after my first summer, right? Um, I came here on a scholarship, and my scholarship would only cover um, the semesters that I was in school, but not the summer break. And I needed a way to find, have a source of income. I'd done obviously all this work, but never paid myself a single dollar. And so I actually worked at a grocery store as a cashier and in the meat department to my first summer in 2021. And I remember every single day as I was going to work, um, I would see this homeless man that was sitting out there. Um, he was around 65 years old. He had a back problem, so he was always walking like this. And I remember, he would sit right next to the bus stop. And every day when I'd go to work and I'd end my shift, I would see him sitting there. And every single day, like I never carry cash here, and so I would never have anything to give him, and I would all feel so terrible because I'm like I felt some sort of connection to this person, and every single day I would tell myself, you know what, tomorrow I'll bring cash and I'm gonna give him something. Um, but the days would pass, and I would always forget to bring any money. And then one random day in the summer, it was actually the hottest day of the summer that summer. And I was like, I had an idea. I'm like, I don't have any cash, but what I can do is maybe I can go to him and ask him, is there something that I can get him from the store and buy it for him and give it to him? And so I did exactly that. I went out after my shift and asked him, hey, is there anything I can get you? And he said, "Yeah, I would love a bucket of yogurt. It's super hot today, and it would be like a nice way to get hydrated." And so I got him this yogurt, came back, gave it to him, and I wanted to spark a conversation with him to fully understand why he got into the situation that he got to. Because a lot of times, again, when we see people that are homeless or facing different challenges, we assume stuff. And I wanted to spend time to listen to his problem. And however, I was a little scared to start off a conversation. And so I just stood next to my bus stop and I see him. Um, I noticed that he started walking back into the store right after I gave him that yogurt, and he comes back and he starts ranting to me, and he's like, did you see what just happened? And I'm like, no, what happened? And he's like, basically, when you're giving me this bucket of yogurt, there was another homeless person that basically stole my hat of coins and went into the store, and I just caught her. And I'm like, oh my God, I'm so sorry. Like, I felt so bad because if I hadn't done that, his thing would not be stolen. And then he started ranting to me about his situation and how he got there. And I kept listening to him. And he mentioned that basically 10 years before that, he got into this really bad accident where, because of the accident, he broke his back. And his job at the time was in construction, and he was not able to get any form of employment because he broke his back. And that got eventually got him to the situation that he got to. And so my follow-up question to him was, oh my God, like when did you get that accident? Like, tell me more about it. And what he ended up saying was, he said it happened on 24th October. And I'm like, what, 24th October? That's like 1 week after this Charter for Compassion event. No, I didn't say that. That was a couple of years ago. But he said 24th October, and 24th October is actually my birthday. And I'm like, what? 24th October is my birthday? And he's like, what? 24th October is also my birthday. And I'm like, I share a birthday with this guy, and on his birthday, he just experienced a moment that basically changed his whole life. And I'm like, there probably was a reason why I felt some sort of connection to this person. And we end up talking, and every single day after that, I made sure that I, tried to help him out. And my goal that summer was to help him get off the streets. And I remember one day when I got him this blanket, because his blanket got stolen. When I gave it to him, he said something that really stuck to me until today. He said, my mom used to tell me that every time someone gives you a gift, you should never say no to it, because when you're saying no to someone that gives you something, you're actually taking away that feeling that they would have by giving you something. And that feeling is worth, there's no amount of money, no amount of anything that you achieve that can take away that feeling. And the reason why I share that story is that when we are practicing compassion, when we are giving to others, as much as it's about the other person and enduring their pain and what they're going through, in reality, compassion is probably the most selfish thing that you can do. And that's good, because you get that feeling of giving to someone that no amount of money, no amount of success can actually replace. And so, as you folks are thinking about compassion, and as we end our session today, I want you folks to reflect on what compassion really means to you. I want you to reflect on the idea that in order to be compassionate with other people, you got to be compassionate to yourself. And remember that Buddhist story that we share. The second step of being compassionate is shutting up and listening. I shared a lot of stories on the power of really doing that. The third thing about compassion is collaboration, and thinking about how we can work together to be more compassionate and to have an impact that's bigger than ourselves. And the last thing that I want you folks to reflect on is think of compassion as not only something about the other person, but also something that you can help for yourself and to feel better about yourself. I'm gonna end at that point. Again, super excited, super grateful to have spent the time with you folks. I would love to stay connected with all of you. I know we dropped my website on the chat. If there's any way that I can support or be part of your journey or work together, definitely please reach out. And yeah, I'd love to take any questions. I know we have a couple minutes here. Thank you so much, everyone.
Thank you so much, Ziyaan. And we're going to keep the comments open in case there are any questions for you. I know there was fantastic engagement in the chat, and I know I speak on behalf of everyone at the Charter for Compassion, as well as from what I can tell in the chat, that your words so deeply resonated with all of us. And I am truly at a loss of words to express how deeply beautiful your story was. And I really want to just name and honor the fact that you shared your story with so much vulnerability and courage. I do know that you are an award-winning keynote speaker, but I think it was beautiful to learn. And I also want to point out that, at least for me personally, the importance of sharing our struggles and our journeys, whether we achieve something or not, is so important. And I love how you tied in the 3 different steps, or actions, to how we can be more compassionate. And more than anything else, I really want to say that I love the fact that we are ending our conference with you and your beautiful story, because I think so much of what you said ties in so beautifully with our panels today and our youth-led sessions and capacity building workshops. But more importantly, I love that you leave us with this message of compassion. And it is also important to note that this is something that we need to continue to reflect on. And as Ziyaan said, he is available through his website, his LinkedIn. We do have a speaker profile up for him. So if you'd like to engage with him, you can find him here and network. And I'd like to say thank you so much, Ziyaan. Any final words before we have you move off stage?
No, once again, just super grateful to have had the platform and the opportunity and build on some of the existing work that you folks have been doing for years. I think, yeah, just that message of, again, compassion is something that we can all practice, and it doesn't have to be starting this massive organization or, doing something at that level. It's really about how we treat people around us and in our small communities. And so, again, super grateful. Thank you so much, and yeah, excited to continue building on some of the existing work that you folks are doing.
Thank you so much, Ziyaan, and please do read the comments. I know there's some beautiful words coming through for you. Thank you again for being our keynote speaker and delivering this fantastic and inspirational speech. There's so much to learn from what you have said, and I'm actually going to go back and watch the recording again because I know that I'm truly inspired by your words. Thank you, Ziyaan.
Thank you. See you, folks.
And with that, I would like to take a few minutes again to say thank you to everybody who joined us today for our first day of the Charter for Compassion Global Youth Conference. A big note of gratitude to all of our panelists, our fantastic moderators, our leaders who held their space in the youth-led sessions, as well as our expert facilitators who guided us through our capacity building workshops, and of course to Ziyaan Virji, our wonderful keynote speaker of this conference. I would also like to extend our gratitude to the wonderful participation in the audience. Thank you, everybody, for engaging in the chat, showing up in the sessions, and really arriving, I think, in the most authentic way possible. We have been monitoring the chat, and honestly, there's some fantastic comments here. And with that, I would like to officially close the first day of the Charters Global Youth Conference and remind you that our final day is tomorrow. We will be starting at the same time as we did today, which is 8:30 a.m. Eastern Time. You can go to the reception area and look at the schedule to see what time that is for you. And we would love to have you join us again tomorrow to really take in our remaining two panels, our youth spotlight speaker who we will be opening with, as well as our youth-led sessions and capacity building workshops, and our closing comments from our executive director, Marilyn Turkovich, executive director of the Charter for Compassion. Thank you so much, everyone. Please note that the platform will remain open for you to network on, so feel free to step back in, try the speed networking option. It sounds a little overwhelming, but it is a great tool, and continue to engage with each other, and we will see you tomorrow. Thank you so much.